My favorite time of the week. It is Monday for our industry update. And here we go. So, um, Sean, I'm going to start this way.
Okay.
Technically, I could throw some negative articles on the screen, and there's probably some that are going to have some negative undertones to it. And I like to remind people that marketing and news media make money on inciting emotion.
Yep.
And I think us as an industry have to learn how to navigate all the emotions people bring to the conversation and help them see the logical way to move forward to build their lives. Meaning, as a buyer, I could be emotional about interest rates going up. Agent steps in and says, hey, here's a logic way to think about that. Or there's an article that's going to say prices might go backwards. We're going to put up on the screen here in a minute. That's emotional. Logically, I could say, hey, by the way, the predictions say it's going to go back up in 24, and the net is you're actually still ahead. But if I want to get caught up in the emotion, I can get caught up in the emotion, right? So anyway, I just think as agents and especially leaders, I challenge our leaders to do the same thing. Like, the world likes to respond to things emotionally first before they get caught up in figuring out how to process it emotionally. I'm sorry, logically.
I believe our job is to be the ones that are driving that narrative.
Yeah.
Right. So what does that mean? I'm going to share my screen if that's all right, if I have a screen share opportunity, because I think this illustrates it. Before I share my screen, here's what I'm going to tell you. Make a statement. Let's pretend I'm Fox News. Let's pretend I'm Nightline. Let's pretend I'm on CNN. Housing inventory in Atlanta more than doubled in the last 3 months. Good news or bad news? It's just news, right? Let's give it perspective, okay? So, am I right? Did housing inventory more than double in the last 2 months in Atlanta? Absolutely it did. So what does that mean? Here's the perspective. Look at housing inventory from 2008 through today. And the reason I love this is this shows the height of the last time we went through a shift, right? So housing inventory more than doubled. And yet we still remain at almost a historic low in housing availability in Atlanta. We have what are we looking at? 2.3 months of inventory, 2.5 months of inventory. And this graph, by the way, is straight out of Chartmasters. Everyone in the Heart of Atlanta group has access to it. And what I love about it is when we're talking to our clients, it's a little confusing to them. It gives us the opportunity to drive this conversation. So for perspective, the green line that runs across the middle of this graph, that's a balanced market. So has the sky fallen yet? No, absolutely. In perspective of it, we're still at a historic low in inventory, even though it's doubled. The narrative in our office is not that the market is dropping. Ours is that the market is normalizing. Recognize that green trend line is a normal market, right? We've been below it for almost 6 years now.
Yeah, there is no such thing as normal.
Right.
But it certainly makes sense. So that's interesting. So when I put my screen up, Sean, and here's Fulton County, right? And here's the numbers we go through every week. So there's 786 active properties in Fulton County as of this morning. Thank you to our cyberbacker, Stephen. Is that a good or a bad number?
It's just a number.
It's just a number. I think it's good. In one hand, a year ago, we would have begged to have that many houses to show. But 10 years ago, that would have been a better number then, because it would have meant that the economics of supply and demand looked different than what they did 10 years ago. So really, it's just a number, right? Now, historically, if I go back and look the last 2 months, it really hadn't changed much, has it? I mean, 816 to 786, up, down, right? Like, we're kind of holding an active inventory number in Fulton County, which I think is good. Active under contract, 105 right now. I will say I can see a trend of that going backwards a little bit. Call it 15, 20%. It may be too soon to tell, yet you can see it slowing down a little bit. Here's the $1 million question. Is that seasonality? Is that shifting market? Is that October? Is that just a phenomenon? It's a little early to tell.
Here's a little bit of what we're facing too. We can retroactively look back, right? We can retroactively go, market shifted May 27th, right? So what we're coming out of is our first cycle. And I think if you look at the 10-3 date, let's go back 3 months, 9-3, 8-3, 7-3, very end of June, right? All of those properties that listed in June and July were based on the market that had been appreciating. And when we can see where the market shifted, as soon as you got after that, we're just coming out of that first 90 to 100 day cycle after the market shifted. So we're seeing more expireds, we're seeing more price reductions because pricing has not adjusted yet, but is beginning to with the market.
There you go. You jump down here to pendings, same kind of commentary around active option and pendings. You can kind of see it slowing down a little bit.
Yep.
Now remember, these are leading indicators, but this is the one that matters. This is the one that puts all the money in the pocket, right? 235 closings in the last 7 days, 284, 272, 323, and 235. You want to average out the month of October. How does that compare to the month of September at 252, 232, 315, 335? It's probably going to come in a little down, right? Like, and you're going to read in news media that units are slowing down. I agree with that statement. We're selling less houses right now. Let that be a wake-up call, not the sky is falling, and say, hey, let's go get busy. Let's go get into activities and make sure you're finding your houses to sell, because the agents that aren't doing the activities, they're not going to find them.
Between now and the end of the year is the time to double down in communication with your database.
Yep.
To be able to know in advance who's going to be doing something. There's a great one. If I can go back to screen share, let's look at. So one of your questions was, is it seasonal, right?
Yeah.
Well, let's look at Atlanta's seasonal market. Looks to me like every October and November dips a little bit coming off of the summer, right? However, that red line represents this year. We are considerably behind in terms of units sold to both 2020 and 2021.
All right,
Right,
Sean,
now,
I'm going to give you a bad visual analogy. You ready?
Yep.
So let's say Brett goes on a bender and eats an enormous amount of ice cream and pasta, and I gain 100 pounds. And then I decide to get in shape and I lose 100 pounds. The headline's going to say, hey, Caldwell loses 100 pounds. But the truth is, I probably was already overweight 100 pounds, and it wasn't really that I net effect lost 100 pounds. I was overweight to begin with. Right. So in this analogy, the economy was overweight in 2020 and 2021.
For sure.
So all the headlines are saying, oh, this drastic drop. But the truth is it was already inflated because of the pandemic. We talked about last week, the pandemic market, the pandemic interest rate. Well, those were attached to a specific period of time of 2020 and 2021. So it's not really fair to compare that. Like, yes, it would be cool to go, hey, we lost 100 pounds. But the truth is I probably had put it on during the pandemic in the first place. And now I'm just taking it back off, right?
Yep.
So how you like my visual there? You're welcome. Keep going.
No, I mean, it's what you just did is you told the whole story of the situation, not the headline. Yeah. And that's what we've always got to fight, is the headlines. And this is where I truly believe using market statistics, data does all of the heavy lifting in our conversation. It does all the heavy work for us. Now we just got to interpret it, right? Now we just got to share what that means to our clients. So does it mean you're not going to be able to sell your house next year? Absolutely not. Does it mean you might not be able to sell your house at a 27% appreciation from this year? Yeah, that's probably a different story. Housing is going to be relatively flat. It may go down a little bit. So far it hasn't, but it's certainly flattening out.
Yep. All right, so let's pop these numbers back up. Let me finish running through these. So DeKalb County, 487, not too much change in inventory. Active option, we're at 69, down from 80 to 74-ish, maybe a little off. Pendings at 157, 144 the week before, down from 198, 191, maybe a little off. Closings at 146. DeKalb County bounces around a lot more than some of the other counties. But I don't think 147 is that crazy. Maybe it's a little off. It's hard to tell. You can see how much it bounces around from week to week. But what I think the big story here is inventory's good. Of course, you got to put perspective around that. The pending contracts, whether it's active, under contract, or pending, both those metrics are down a little bit, which means the speed at which we're putting houses or taking houses off the market has slowed down a little bit. And then ultimately, if that continues, you will see the closings go backwards a little bit.
Yep.
But that's the lag measure, not the lead measure. What do we expect to happen? We expect the market to slow down a little bit. We expect to sell less houses next year. But I think you got to be careful of the paradigm and how you think about that, which goes to my analogy of the losing 100 pounds, right? Like at some point in time, we fattened up during the pandemic, and now we're taking it off coming out of the pandemic, and the headlines are going to read Caldwell loses 100 pounds, but that's not exactly the whole truth, right?
Yeah.
The other big county, obviously Cobb County, you got 508 active inventory, which is actually down a little bit for Cobb County. You got this is not a correct number. We're not 7 active under contract. I'll figure that one out. 197 pending, and then 164 in the closings. You can see it starting to come off a little bit. We'll see as we watch these numbers going forward. But what do you make of the numbers, Sean? What's the talking point? What do we need to talk about?
Here's what's happening. With the normalization of the market, we're going to a skills-based market. We have a generation of realtors don't know what it means to host a caravan. We haven't been able to. Here's the other thing. Definitely focusing on listings right now. We haven't been able to generate buyers off of our listings. They've been at 42 offers by the end of the weekend. Listen on Thursday, take your offers, put it under contract Monday. We haven't been able to hold open houses. We haven't been able to do marketing around it. Like, that's where your mind needs to start going. Okay, now I have the gift of having 30 days to promote this property. So what am I going to use? What's the platform going to look like now? How am I going to create it? Use it to create more conversations with people about buying, selling, and investing in real estate.
Well, I think this has always been the secret sauce of listing agents in our business, right?
Sure.
Because I could take 10 great listings in the month of October, but if we were in a real estate market like we were a year ago, those 10 listings turned out to be 10 sales to me. But if this October I took 5 listings, but I had a 30-day period to market those listings, and I picked up 5 buyers from those listings, I still sold 10 houses. It just looks different. So the trick is the listing part, because that listing creates opportunity for the buy side. And, I was teaching business planning clinic, and we were talking about a perfectly balanced real estate agent's business is 50-50, 50 sellers, 50 buyers, because when you properly market listings, it should thrive the other side of your business. That didn't happen during the pandemic. So it actually is a gift of the market slowing down a little bit. It's a little cynical. I'm not sure we're excited about that gift, but at the same time, it is a gift. There is a silver lining. All right. Can we go to some negativity for a minute? And we'll round it out. Headline on CNN all weekend: home prices are finally falling, but how low will they go? If you were on the news, read it, it was pushed everywhere. This was the top story on CNN over the weekend. That creates emotion, which goes to our point before. Our job is, what's the logic inside of the headline? Okay, so let's get down to this for a minute. The different economists started making predictions, Sean. So the economists at Goldman Sachs said they expect home prices to decline around 5% to 10% from the peak hit in June. Wells Fargo economists said they, I don't know why my cursor is not working. They expect home prices will drop 5.5% year over year by the end of 2023. They also estimate the median price for an existing single family home to be $385,000 this year, up 7.8% from last year. So now think about this. This is logical. This year, the price appreciated 7.8%. Next year, you're going to give back 5.5%. What's the delta?
You're still 2% above where you were.
You're still 2% up over a 24-month period.
Right.
But the headline's going to read, how low will prices go?
And this is another
prices are
opportunity.
finally falling. How low will they go? Right. So you got to get the perspective around this. It's really important.
And I think in perspective, there's some people when they see that headline who immediately in their brain like shiver and rewind to 2008, 2009. Right. We saw price appreciation as high as 42% in DeKalb County in 2009. Right. The difference is this shift is not partnered currently, at least, with a generational collapse of the economy. 2008 was a once in a generation collapse of our economy, one that we never thought we'd get back to. Here we are just 13 years later, and we've already surpassed where we were before that crash.
Yep.
Right. And so what you don't have is sellers having to sell properties because they're being foreclosed on because they can't pay their bills. Not that there won't be an element of it, but you realize in 2009, 2010, 66% of transactions in the Atlanta market were distressed properties, either short sales or foreclosures. We're at less than 1% right now still.
Yeah.
Maybe
It's
2%.
not even
right?
the same ballpark.
Right. We have people, I bet, who have a license who don't even know what a short sale is.
Yeah.
And not that that's an indictment, but we may not get back to short sales.
Absolutely. So this, I think, is probably the smartest statement in the whole article. It says, the economists anticipate the median home price will fall to $364,000, a decline of 5.5% from this year. They predict prices will rebound and rise again in 2024. Really important to know that. And the median price ticking up 3.3% to $376,000 by the end of 2024. So now, if I look at next year plus this year, that 24-month period, that says that home prices will net 2% over the 24 months. But if I look at next year in 2024, it says they're going to net a negative 2% over the next 2 years, the next 24 months. But if I put them all together, it's a net effect of zero, which says you still built equity, you still built wealth. Real estate is a long-term investment, not a short-term gain, unless you're trying to flip property. And at the end of the day, you help people understand this. And if they're planning on staying in real estate for any time longer than a 24-month period, it's always smart to buy real estate with a professional real estate agent that makes you pay a fair price under good terms. I think it's really important to see that.
And savvy investors know now's the time to buy.
Yep.
Right.
So
Because
that's
you're buying during that temporary pause. Rates are up, but you know what? Rates are going to go back down in the next 12 months. So that's where you start looking at creative financing. Do a 2-year buy down.
All right.
Do
So
it
this one's even
2-2-1.
crazier. So then they start talking about how the locations matter. It says ultimately home prices fall will depend on where you live. And we've talked about Atlanta being a softer market for a recession. It says nationally, we might see a 5% decline from the peak, but prices will decline by more in the West, and there will be a smaller decline in the Southeast. It says the drops will be more deeply felt in places where there were larger gains during the pandemic, many of them in the West and Sun Belt, including cities like Austin, Phoenix, and Boise. So what, here's what I'm hearing. It's not as bad as the headlines are going to bill it out to be. One, two, we live in a killer place where we've got the gift of affordability, great prices, great markets. It's going to be softer in the Southeast than where the majority of the country is going to feel.
Yep.
100%. I laughed because this was literally the top headline on CNN all weekend. I was like, really? And then Gary Keller got misquoted. So once again, headlines sell. 2022 poised to become the second worst deal year in history. Context. What that means is the second biggest drop in home sales from one year to the next. So what he's saying is, with Keller noting that the onset of the Great Recession, transactions dropped by 1.5 million. He's expecting us to give back 1 million transactions next year. Here's the analogy. If I was skinny and put on 100 pounds and gave back 100 pounds and lost them, the headline's still going to read, Caldwell loses 100 pounds. Yep. We were fat during the pandemic in real estate sales, and we're going on a diet to go back to normal. The headline's going to read, the largest drop in 1 year recorded history of home sales coming back. But the truth is we were in a pandemic and there was excess going on. So you got to get context in what the headlines are saying. What do you make of that, Sean Dammann?
I mean, I think that's the exact point. What's the perspective around it? Yeah, so we're going to sell a lot less houses than we did last year. We're coming off of a record year. That doesn't mean it's going to be the worst year ever. It just means it's going to come back down. It's just anytime you see a bell curve or a bubble, and we needed to come back down. We can't sustain 27% increase every year.
It's healthy.
Right?
Read that statement. Tell me what it means to you.
Right now, hold on. Right now, the winners will be those who look up and go, okay, we're going to double down on our value proposition. We're going to double down on our lead generation, and we're going to double down on staying connected to our database. I mean, that's what I'm just saying. Between now and the end of the year, take these tools and use them to have education moments with your clients. Take a specific graph out of Chartmasters and put it on your social media and go, what does this really mean to you? Write this in your blog, put this in your newsletter, put it out there, shoot a video going, hey, houses inventory doubled in the last 2 months. What does that mean? Well, it means we're still 3 months below a balanced market, and it's still a good time to sell your home, right? It's all around being what Gary would call the local economist. It is our job within our sphere with our clients to make sure we're the ones driving the narrative, and then look for every possible way to begin a conversation with people about real estate. Holiday party season's coming up, and every one of you is going to go to a holiday party, and what are they going to ask you? How's the real estate market, right?
Well, they're really asking you now because they're reading all this stuff, right?
Yeah, so that's why these conversations are important, is to put the perspective around it. Yep.
I got two more things real quick. So one is midterm elections impact real estate. You know, you always understand that people in the political electoral process do not like the economy to be rough prior to an election. Everybody wants everybody happy economically before an election. Whether you're on the left or the right, it really doesn't matter. They just don't like the economy being screwed up going into an election. Well, that one went out the window. I think we're having a little economic, but I started thinking about this. You realize that all the things that go into valuing real estate, school systems, economic development, all that stuff that plays a factor in how real estate thrives in your local neighborhood has a lot to do with politicians and your vote. So it's not a left or a right or do or don't or who's good and who's bad. It's just, hey, if you care about your profession, realize your vote matters in real estate and all the things that go into what makes the value of real estate in our backyards, right?
Yep.
Anything you'd add to that?
I mean, this will be anecdotal. Over 22 years of selling real estate in Atlanta, elections always slow down the market. In 2 more years, it's going to be worse than the mid-years. And as soon as they're over, it doesn't matter who wins, everything comes back to normal. And what I would equate it to is, what does your business look like on August the 7th, right? School's just started back. Everybody stops for a month and then it comes back in September. The market can get wonky during elections. I don't sense the wonkiness I've seen in previous years and previous elections this year so far, but they do. It would not surprise me.
Well, I don't know about your phone, but mine's blowing up with political text left and right, and I'm seeing them all over. So once again, the political machines of today understand marketing just like the news media do. And it's all about emotion and to create movement, which works, by the way.
Yeah.
And then our job as business professionals is to find our way to logic and help consumers and help ourselves navigate the emotional waters that are out there, so we can find a logical way to put money in your pocket and help you build a real estate business that's worth owning.
I do think there's a general distrust of headlines in today's society.
It
doesn't matter what, right?
Us.
Doesn't matter what I read. I take it with skepticism. Whether, if it's from the left, I'm hearing how horrible Herschel Walker is, who's a Georgia icon to me, right? If it's from the right, I'm hearing how horrible, how Warnock's spending billions. I take it all with a grain of salt. What that does do is these outlandish headlines give us the chance to redirect the conversation. And you know what? That's not exactly true. Here's what the true, and the stats and the data and the charts that we have are where we get that information.
Yeah, that the truth is in the numbers in our business, and we always need to go back to numbers. All right, last bit, I'm going to end on a positive note. I'm going to tell you what I'm hearing, and I'm going to tell you I have nothing to back it up. How you like that? Here's what I'm hearing from our lender friends. They anticipate rates to come back down by like March. And somebody smart out there is probably predicting all this, but I think it is a reminder that our good friend Sean Rawls said, marry the house, date the rate. So whether somebody buys a house in November 2022 or February 2024, there will be a moment in time of reckoning where they can reset that rate. And I think it's important for you to understand that and be able to give people that perspective, because some people think their interest rates forever. And the easier you can get somebody in a wise counsel with a great lender that's going to say, hey, we're going to put you in this now, and as soon as the rates are ready to roll, we'll reset your loan at low cost or no cost or whatever the pitch is. It's not our business. I think that's important to help people understand, because I think you're going to see some 7s on the interest rates.
Yeah.
I think you're going to see 5s again sometime at some point in the foreseeable future, and there'll be an opportunity. And just help people see that, because it's not worthy of waiting for that 5 when you can get the right price on the house today and reset the interest rate 6 months from now.
Well, and you need to be involved. You need to be in dialogue with your lenders about their creative financing options. The big conversation in our office, I'm pretty sure on the broker call at 12. I know Christian was on. We've been talking a lot about the 2-2 buy downs. You can buy your interest rate down 2 points for your first 2 years. First year, 1 point the second year, and by the third year it goes up. Well, I feel pretty certain interest rates will come down. So you could do a 2-year buy down and then refinance out of it next year at that rate, and you're really kind of set there, right?
Yep. Julie, you said the NAR economist Yun said likely to see 8% before end of year and into January. Yeah, like
and somewhere between March and June, it's going to come back down.
Who would have thought we'd see 8% interest rates? None of it scares me. I think it is all in how we have to teach people how to logically think about it, and that's the most important thing. So
if you're an old guy like me, you can go, you know what? I bought my first house at 8%. It was the lowest ever at the time. And if you're a young guy or a lady, unlike me, you can say, my parents bought a house at this amount and it was the lowest amount, right? 8% is not earth-shatteringly horrible.
There you go. All right, guys, we start to end on time. Happy Monday. There's your industry update.